According to OnlyUsemeBLADE.com, Brian OnlyUsemeBLADE Risso is an American sexual assault predator / gaming commentary content creator on the site known as YouTube. Brian Risso was born in 1983 in Seattle, the city he would call home for the next few decades. Brian spent most of his time playing basketball with the local neighborhood boys before learning that he had an affinity for saying the N-word. Brian loved saying the N-word, but because he lived in the SJW capital of the world, he had no like-minded people to share in this passion. Brian would venture around Seattle hoping to make new friends, but he only ever encountered the poor and homeless. The streets of Seattle were littered with these poor people, so much so that he began to hate the homeless, often mocking them for being poor. He spent months searching for a group of like-minded individuals, but they were all located in Alabama. Brian had given up his hopes of sharing his love for the N-word until one fateful day he happened to be on one of his 24-hour My Name is Earl marathons. He saw an ad for an up-and-coming game called Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Brian was so excited when he had heard the game would have online voice chat. Brian would finally have the chance to say the N-word with impunity. Brian saved the date and waited for the release of his new favorite game. When the time came, Brian left first thing in the morning so that he would be the first in line at GameStop. After getting his copy of Modern Warfare, Brian sped home, forgetting that the speed limit was only 25 miles an hour. While driving past an elementary school, he nearly plowed over 3 children who happened to be crossing the street. Brian rushed to his front door and down to his basement. He started up the Xbox and inserted the game's disc. Brian had never been so excited for anything like this before. Brian's mother was so happy that Brian finally found something to keep him happy. In fact, Brian had not left his basement for the next 5 days. Modern Warfare had consumed him. He cared only about prestiging. By the end of the 5th day, he had already reached max prestige. He had already become burnt out now that he had unlocked everything. The game was too easy for him. He went flawless in every lobby. He thought to himself, how can I already be done with this game? Until he met the legendary COD player, OnlyUseKnife. Brian had become enamored with the idea of giving up his guns in favor of a knife. The first thing Brian did was create a brand new account so that he could start fresh. He wanted to make a unique name for himself, just like OnlyUseKnife. He brainstormed names such as MeUseKnife and XXX_knife_XXX, but he didn't like these names at all, until he eventually came up with the totally original idea of calling himself OnlyUsemeBLADE. From then onwards, Brian vowed to never shoot another bullet so long as he played. Brian, or Blade now, would go on to realize that he had a talent for knifing and calling his victims the N-word. That's when one of his online friends from Alabama that he had always played with recommended that he start up a gaming YouTube channel. At first, Brian wasn't sure about this idea, but his friend eventually convinced him to do it. And so Brian started up a channel named after his knifing account. OnlyUsemeBLADE would go on to take YouTube by storm, gaining thousands of views in his first few weeks. Unfortunately, this meant no more N-words for Brian. He had to censor himself to keep his channel in good standing with YouTube. As his channel gained more notoriety, more people began to take notice of him. One such person is the diabolical troll DJ Killer Keemstar and his clan known as FAG. Keem came up with the idea of copyright striking Blade's channel over and over in an attempt to piss him off just for fun. But Blade didn't react how Keem had expected at all. Blade instead called Keem up on the phone to confront him. Before the call, they had both done research on each other, learning that they both had a great talent for saying the N-word. Because of this, they eventually came to an understanding and even became friends playing COD together. A few months later, and they had become such great friends that Keem invited Blade onto his podcast. But in order for this to happen, Blade would have to move across the country to Buffalo, New York. Blade accepted Keem's offer and moved to Buffalo, leaving Seattle behind. Blade and Keem's podcast found much success. Blade's life was on the up and up, and he was becoming more successful every day. until one night while driving home from filming a podcast. That is when he saw a billboard advertising that Jägermeister needed volunteers to taste test their brand new drink. Blade had always been into alcohol but had never had an opportunity like that before, so he took it. The next day he showed up at the Jaeger factory and signed up for the program. It was there that he met a beautiful woman named Ashley, who directed him into the room where he would be testing the new product. In the room was a bench, a table, and what seemed like a mountain of Jaeger. Ashley told Blade to have a seat and start drinking, which he did. Ashley left the room, leaving Blade to taste the countless Jaegers. After finishing his 10th bottle, Blade asked if he was finished yet. He got no reply, so he went to open the door, but it was locked. That is when Ashley, speaking over the loudspeaker, told Blade he could not leave until he drank every last drop of Jaeger in that room. Blade got angry and started to shout that Ashley was a poor N-word and he would not be drinking anymore. Ashley simply replied by saying, "You better start drinking now or you'll never leave." So Blade gave in and drank every last bottle of Jaeger. Emptying them straight down his throat in record speeds, he finished them in no time at all. At the end of it all, Blade had enough bottles of Jaeger to make a Christmas tree out of them. But unfortunately, Blade had consumed enough alcohol to make a whale drunk, causing him to black out. Turns out that Jaeger was attempting to create a Jaeger-powered superhuman. When Blade woke up, he was at home and had forgotten everything that had happened. Everything was fine, except for that, for some reason, Blade had some nasty-looking holes in his leg. He couldn't figure out where these little bruises had come from. After a few seconds of worrying about them, Blade decided to move on and stop caring. Blade would also remember the name of Ashley, but could not remember who Ashley was. Blade's life would be normal for the next few weeks until he and Keem were invited to the Soar Clan house party. About 20 minutes after arriving at the party, Blade had already gone plastered and began getting touchy with the other party guests. He made his way throughout the entire house until he entered the master bedroom. Blade was so drunk that for some reason his pants fell down and dragged at his feet. Blade turned the light on and there he saw a woman lying on the bed. She screamed because in that lighting, he looked like an ogre. Almost immediately, all of the other members of the Soar clan had put down their G-Fuel drinks and rushed up the stairs to save her. The entirety of Soar clan pounced on Blade and piled up on him. Unfortunately for them, Blade had a newly acquired retard strength from his drunkenness, which meant the whole clan would have to wrestle him towards the front door. After removing him and Keem, they slammed the door shut. Fast forward 3 months and Blade had gotten drunk off Jaeger for the 90th consecutive night. This alcoholism caused Blade to neglect his YouTube career, getting him banned on Twitch 3 times and StreamMe once. He had also noticed that the more he drinks, the more he gropes. No woman in Buffalo was safe from Blade's grasp. He often showed up at bars offering to crack girls' backs in front of their boyfriends. Tired of Blade's drunk ass, Keem decided to ship him off to his good friend Ice Poseidon's streamer mansion in Los Angeles, where he could put his alcoholism to use. Blade spent the next few months leeching off Ice before Ice had a mental breakdown and left LA for Austin, Texas. After that, Blade was left homeless. That was until he met Casey the Content God. Casey promised Blade that he would be part of his brand new RV trip, which Blade accepted, knowing he could use it to find Ashley. But in the meantime, Blade needed to find somewhere to live. He tried living with Bone Clinks, but he was kicked out the next day for pissing on the couch. With no other options, Blade reluctantly moved in with Hector, the man known for letting Ice spit in his mouth. That brings us to present day, where Blade has embarked on the RV trip in hopes of finding this Ashley girl and to restore his memory. Also, he wants to get laid really, really bad.